When Dan Aykroyd first showed me the script of Ghostbusters, I thought it was impossible to make. His version had special effects on every single page. It took place in outer space as well as here. It was in the future, and it would have been a movie, I think, that would have cost $100 or $200 million just to make. So I had a long conversation with Dan, and we started rewriting the script. I knew that the special effects were very important, and that to combine really first-class special effects with a comedy movie was something that I had not seen before. There had been other comedy movies that had, you know, ghosts that you didn't see, but they were never done as if the special effects were as important as the comedy. And I thought that would be one of the most important things. So I tried to redo the script in such a way that the balance between the comedy and the special effects was more even, because in his draft it was all special effects. And we worked out the script as it was, and I think we ended up with 200 shots. When the studio said to us, all right, you can make the movie, they also said, but there's one catch. You have to have the film ready for next June. I think it was June the 10th we were going to open in the United States. And when they told us this, it was May of the previous year, which meant that we had about 1 year to finish writing the screenplay, design all the creatures and ghosts that are in the film, finish casting the film, and actually shoot the film and edit it and do all the special effects. And as you probably can guess, this is a very, very short time. Normal films with this many special effects shots take at least twice that much time, if not 3 times that much time, from point of conception through final shooting. So we didn't know if we could really do this. And of course, I didn't have a great deal of experience with special effects. I knew that they took time. I didn't know if we were really going to be able to do it. I met Richard Edlund because Michael Gross, my associate producer, knew about him. He had followed his career very much, and he had heard that Richard Edlund wanted to set up a shop on his own in Los Angeles, away from Industrial Light and Magic. And this turned out to be true. We met, we talked about what we wanted to do. I think Richard was excited about doing a film that involved first-class special effects with comedy. And I was very happy with the work that he did, because he managed to do all 200 of these shots in that short time that he had.
My role in National Lampoon, which is a comedy magazine, in some ways is similar to my role in this film, in that as an art director of National Lampoon, I had to translate visually a lot of humor, but it had to be maintained on a very strict satirical line, in that we didn't interpret everything as a cartoon. We didn't make everything that was supposed to be funny broadly silly. The same problem applied to this film. It was, although it's a comedy, one of the things we had to be sure we didn't do was to turn all of the creatures and characters that we were going to use in the ghost sequences into jokes. So there was that fine line we had to continually walk, which was, how do you maintain the humor but not get too silly? How do you counterplay the humor of the stars of the movie against a horrific image? And if you make the horrific image too horrific, you've defeated some of the comedy. If you make it too broadly silly, you've made the wrong kind of point. And the balance between the two was very critical at all times. And some of that was design. Some of that was how we designed each of the characters. And that was a similar problem to what I had to deal with at National Lampoon, constantly not to be overly silly. Keep the joke working on a very sensitive visual line.
Yeah, here we, what I've sort of, the way I like to approach a production is to first of all get an art director who functions almost like a visual effects supervisor here. And so the art director has the ability to draw storyboards and to visualize concepts on paper, and is also able to communicate those ideas to the various people who are working on the shots. I think that this is a very good way to approach imaging, because you're dealing with a visual image. You have to have someone who's very visual to do that. Now, on Ghostbusters, we had John Bruno, who was perfect for the project, and John and I worked together on Poltergeist. He wound up actually directing a lot of scenes here because he understood visually how they worked. Then he would, communicate that information to Conrad, let's say, who was the editor, and it became it's always a work with each other situation, but that's how the art director functions here. I wind up in a position, on the other hand, of being more like a producer.
And the process of storyboarding something out is basically that you're visualizing the written word that's on a page. The first thing that my technique is to read a page, get an image in my mind of camera direction, of how am I seeing that scene? Is the action going one way or the other? The director may see it differently. But once I start a scene, I rough it out. At that point, I try to look for something fairly dramatic and design it in such a way that if it's an effect scene, that there's places to hide wires or cables. As the Marshmallow Man walks in a certain way, there's always cables that operated his face that would be coming out the back of his leg. So we basically would visualize the scene as best way that for us to produce that shot, and then send that over to the director, or any director that we'll be working with, and they, in turn, if it fits in with what they want, fine. If you've given them another approach, another direction to look at, it's fine. So Ivan didn't make very many changes, but if he did make changes, we just basically change it right at that time, and then finalize the scenes after that. You have to. Once the board is finalized, once it's set, you can shoot the film out of sequence in order, whatever fits the schedule. But we stressed heavily during this production that once the boards are approved, they absolutely cannot be changed. And once we're in production, that's the direction we're going. The camera will be set up to those boards, and that the live action must fit, must work in and out of our storyboards. So that being the case, we also storyboarded much of the live action so that there wouldn't be a live action scene ending up with the camera up here and then cut to a shot down here that's going to be effect, which would telegraph the fact that an effect is coming. We storyboarded everything on that movie.